Progress is not a concept, it's a law. It's the requirement for growth, evolution, and dominance. The second you stop moving forward, you start decaying. There is no neutral in life. You're either climbing or you're slipping. And the biggest mistake people make is thinking they can revisit the past and expect a different outcome. You cannot conquer new territory with an old map. You cannot evolve by entertaining what you already escaped. Going back to an old relationship, town, or job is the equivalent of hitting rewind on a life you fought to outgrow. Let's be real, you didn't leave for no reason. You walked away from that ex because something was broken, something was missing, or worse, you were shrinking just to keep the peace. You left that town because it boxed you in, because the people there settled for average and mocked ambition. You quit that job because it drained your energy, crushed your time, and paid you just enough to forget your dreams. Now here's the brutal truth. When you go back, you're not going back as a victor, you're going back as a defeated version of yourself trying to make old mediocrity feel comfortable again. You're trying to fit a lion back into a cage because the jungle got a little rough. That's not strength. That's retreat, and retreat is for people who will never taste greatness. Progress requires sacrifice. It demands discomfort. It forces you to burn bridges not for revenge, but for protection. So you never cross them again. You can't fly if you keep looking for the same nest you outgrew. You can't become a king if you keep visiting the village where you were a servant. Familiarity feels safe, but it's the most dangerous trap. It lures you back with false promises, memories, emotions, nostalgia, but what it really delivers is stagnation, recycled mistakes, and a watered-down version of who you were becoming. Forward motion doesn't wait for approval. It doesn't care if your friends understand, if your family questions you, if your ex suddenly says they've changed. It doesn't care if that old boss offers a little more money. Forward motion is a brutal, beautiful road that demands complete focus, total discipline, and zero backward glances. If your car breaks down, you don't walk back to the last gas station and leave there. You fix it or you find a new way forward. Same thing with your life. You don't go back to what failed. You get smarter, you get stronger, and you level up. Every step back is a betrayal to the progress you claim you want. Every time you reconnect with what broke you, you send a message to the universe. I'm not ready for more. I'm still available for less. You think you're revisiting your past with more wisdom. You're not, you're negotiating with weakness, and weakness always wins when you sit down at the table. People cling to familiarity like a security blanket, convinced that staying in the known is safer than stepping into the chaos of potential. But here's the reality. Familiarity isn't safety, it's sedation. It numbs your ambition, dulls your instincts, and breeds complacency disguised as comfort. When you're surrounded by the same people, the same streets, the same patterns, your mind shuts down its survival mode. It stops hunting, it stops building, it stops fighting. You become tame, look around. Most people aren't struggling because they're untalented. They're stuck because they've submitted to a predictable environment that demands nothing from them. They live in the same town they grew up in, talk to the same friends who never grew up, go to the same job every day where no one wins and everyone pretends it's fine. Over time, the edge dulls, the hunger fades. The lion turns into a house cat. You can't become strong while wrapped in the arms of weakness. And familiarity is the ultimate weak spot. It makes you slow. It makes you emotionally lazy. It tells you lies like at least you know what to expect. But the problem is, what you expect is less. Less risk, less growth, less impact, less challenge. You start tolerating the small insults to your potential because the routine makes them feel normal. That ex that texts you just to check in, familiar. That job that pays just enough to keep you coming back, familiar. That group of people who laugh at your ideas but smile in your face, familiar. All of it is poison served in a comfortable cup. And here's the catch. The longer you stay in that familiar environment, the harder it is to leave. Not because you're trapped physically, but because your mind starts believing it's all you deserve. You start thinking in circles. You stop seeing possibilities. You confuse stillness with peace. You lose the fire. And once the fire's gone, it's not easy to relight. Every great transformation demands discomfort. It requires throwing yourself into the unfamiliar, the unpredictable, the difficult. That's where strength is forged. That's where pressure creates diamonds. The gym isn't familiar when you first walk in. It's intimidating. The first time you step into a room full of winners, it feels awkward. The first time you demand more from life, people look at you sideways. That's the cost, but the reward is evolution. You don't rise by staying where it's warm and easy. You rise by breaking out of the loop. Physically, mentally, emotionally, cut the pattern, burn the script. Exit the loop, that old relationship you keep going back to. It feels familiar because you've trained your brain to accept chaos as love. That old town you keep returning to. It's comfortable because it requires nothing new from you. That job you won't quit, it's known, so you tolerate being underpaid and undervalued. Every one of those decisions reinforces weakness, not because you're not capable of more, but because you're addicted to the predictable people love to talk about loyalty like it's always a virtue. Stay loyal to your roots, your old friends, your history. But here's the truth they don't tell you. Loyalty becomes dangerous when it's pointed in the wrong direction. Staying loyal to your past, the version of you that was broke, confused, weak, uncertain, is the fastest way to kill the future you claim you want. You're not here to honor the past, you're here to outgrow it. The past is supposed to be a lesson, not a lifestyle. It's a reference point, not a residence, but people get addicted to it. They start carrying their old identity like a badge of honor. I've always been this way, they say. This is where I'm from, like that somehow justifies staying stuck. But the truth is, if the old you had it all figured out, you wouldn't have had to evolve. You wouldn't have had to leave that town, cut off that person, or walk away from that dead-end job. You left because something in you knew, there's more, but then life gets hard. Growth isn't glamorous, and when the pressure hits, when success takes longer than expected, when discipline starts to feel like punishment, people start looking back. They start romanticizing the struggle. Suddenly, that old relationship doesn't seem so toxic. That old job feels stable. That small town feels safe. It's not because any of it changed. It's because they're tired of being uncomfortable. So they betray their potential to feel something familiar. You can't carry the weight of who you used to be and still sprint toward who you're meant to become. You can't serve two lives. You either stay loyal to your past and keep repeating it, or you get ruthless about chasing the future and cut every anchor that tries to pull you back. It sounds harsh because it is. Growth is harsh. Success is harsh. Evolution is war. And the enemy is the comfort of what you've already survived. The world doesn't reward you for staying the same. It rewards you for adapting, for pushing past limits, for refusing to settle. The version of you that's going to build an empire, change lives, become a force, that version doesn't have time to entertain the ghosts of old decisions. That version doesn't care who's uncomfortable with your progress. That version doesn't text exes, doesn't return to dead spaces, doesn't dilute itself to make old friends feel okay. Because that version is focused on one thing, the next level. Every time you say yes to the past, you say no to your future. Every time you revisit what you escaped, you disrespect the sacrifices you made to leave. Growth requires you to be loyal to where you're going, not where you've been. And sometimes the most powerful act of self-respect is choosing to let go of everything that reminds you of who you used to be. Nostalgia doesn't tell the truth. It tells you what you want to hear. It's a filtered memory dressed up with emotion and fantasy, carefully edited to remove the pain, the struggle, the disappointment. It shows you a highlight reel of your past, not the reality. And if you're not careful, it'll convince you to run back to things you fought like hell to escape. That's the game nostalgia plays. It waits until you're tired, until your present feels heavy, until growth feels exhausting and lonely. Then it creeps in with a soft voice saying, "Remember how simple it used to be." But simplicity isn't always peace. Sometimes it's just stagnation. Sometimes it's just smallness disguised as comfort. You didn't leave your ex because things were amazing. You didn't quit that job because it was fulfilling. You didn't move away from that town because it was pushing you to grow. You left because you were suffocating, but nostalgia won't remind you of that. It won't show you the nights you cried, the days you felt stuck, the way your confidence shrank just to survive. It'll show you one good moment and play it on a loop like it was your whole life. That one laugh you had with your ex, that one weekend where everything felt okay, that one compliment your old boss gave you before they reminded you that you were replaceable. Nostalgia Cherry picks the best moments from a bad situation and turns them into bait. And if you bite, you'll end up right back where you started. The problem is, people trust their feelings too much. They forget that emotion is not evidence. Just because something feels warm in memory doesn't mean it was good for you. Just because someone made you smile once doesn't mean they didn't hurt you 10 times after that. Just because a place feels like home doesn't mean it helped you grow. Sometimes home is where your dreams went to die, and nostalgia is just the perfume sprayed on the corpse. You've got to be ruthless with memory. You've got to call things what they were, not what you wish they had been. Growth requires clarity. Progress demands brutal honesty. The past doesn't get better just because time has passed. In fact, the more you entertain those nostalgic thoughts, the more you delay becoming who you're supposed to be. It's like reopening an old wound just because you forgot how bad it stung the first time. People waste years trying to recreate a version of the past that never really existed the way they remember it. They go back to old lovers, old jobs, old circles, thinking maybe this time it'll be different. But all that changes is that they've become more desperate, and the situation has stayed exactly the same. Nostalgia told them it was magic. Reality reminds them it was a trap. But by the time they realize, they've already slowed down, already hesitated, already lost momentum chasing a mirage dressed in memory. Repetition is the enemy of evolution. It's the comfort zone's greatest weapon. It lulls people into thinking they're making progress just because they're moving, but in reality, they're running laps on the same tired track, ending up exactly where they started, repeating the same job, the same relationship, the same routine, and calling it stability. Is how average people stay average. It's how dreams rot slowly under the illusion of effort. Average people crave repetition because it's predictable. It doesn't challenge them, it doesn't expose their weaknesses, and it doesn't demand more than they're already giving. That's why they love routine, not because it's productive, but because it's safe. They wake up at the same time, go to the same job they hate, complain about the same problems, talk to the same uninspired people, go home, binge the same shows, and call it life. Then they wonder why nothing changes. It's because they're living the same day over and over again and expecting a different result. If you're repeating what you've already mastered, you're not growing. Growth doesn't come from loops, it comes from leaps. Every next level of your life will demand a different version of you, not a recycled one. That means new challenges, new discomforts, new environments. It means walking into places where you're not the expert, where you feel pressure, where your old tools don't work anymore. That's where transformation happens, not in the comfort of repetition, but in the chaos of new experience. People say repetition builds discipline, and that's true. When it's strategic, repetition with purpose creates skill, but repetition without intention, that's just stagnation in disguise. There's a difference between refining a craft and living on autopilot. Winners repeat only what needs to be sharpened. The average repeat what's easy, what's familiar, what won't break them, and that's the core issue. Most people are terrified of breaking. They don't want to be humbled. They don't want to feel small, so they repeat the past because it doesn't challenge their identity. It doesn't require courage, but the top 1% live differently. They break the pattern. They abandon the routine. They don't care how many times they've succeeded doing something one way. They are always searching for a better, harder, smarter path. They thrive in unfamiliar territory. They reinvent. If you're still in the same job you swore you'd quit 2 years ago, if you're still entertaining the same conversations that lead nowhere, if you're still doing the bare minimum and calling it strategy, then you've chosen repetition over reinvention. And repetition without reinvention is the formula for mediocrity. You'll never find greatness in loops. You find it in the climb, the unpredictable, messy, exhausting climb that average people avoid because it doesn't offer immediate comfort. Success has no interest in your routines. It rewards those who constantly disrupt themselves, who delete what worked yesterday to build what's required for tomorrow, while the average chase routine, the exceptional chase evolution. That's why they win, and everyone else just watches. There comes a point in life where hesitation is more dangerous than risk, where trying to keep a backup plan does nothing but slow you down. That's the moment you need to burn the bridge, not out of hate, not out of revenge, but out of necessity. Because if you can still go back, you will. If comfort is an option, discomfort won't be a requirement. And if the old path is still accessible, the new one won't get your full commitment. People love the idea of empire. They love the fantasy of building something massive, powerful, unshakable. But most aren't willing to do what it takes. They want the glory without the sacrifice. They want to build while still being able to retreat. That's not how empires are made. You don't become great by keeping one foot in the past. You don't dominate by negotiating with mediocrity. You build by going all in, no plan B, no looking back, no rescue routes. Burning the bridge is the moment you decide that the old life is dead, that the old job, the old town, the old relationship, none of it deserves a second chance. It's the act of telling yourself, I'm not going back there, no matter what happens. That kind of commitment rewires your brain. It kills the victim mentality. It forces you to adapt, to rise, to dominate. It makes your goals non-negotiable because survival depends on success. Most people don't succeed because they never fully commit. They half chase goals while keeping the door open to the life they claim to hate. They stay in touch with old exes. They keep their resume polished for jobs they swore they'd never return to. They visit the same hometowns filled with the same people who told them they'd never make it. That's not loyalty. That's fear. That's weakness wearing a sentimental mask. Building an empire isn't just about stacking wins. It's about refusing to rebuild anything that tried to break you. You don't need to fix the past. You need to surpass it. Every time you revisit what you escaped, you drain energy that could have gone into building. You lose focus. You reopen doors that should have stayed locked. You give time to people, habits, and environments that were never built to support your future. When you burn the bridge, you make failure unacceptable. You eliminate the option of retreat. You create a level of urgency that turns average men into machines. There's no comfort zone to fall back into, no safe space to run home to when things get hard. All that's left is forward, build or die, evolve or crumble. That's the edge you need. That edge sharpens everything. Your focus, your hunger, your resilience. You stop negotiating with the old version of you and start constructing a reality that makes him irrelevant. Empires aren't built on recycled blueprints. They're built on ruthless clarity, on absolute decisions, on the ashes of bridges that led nowhere. You don't get to greatness by keeping your past on life support. You get there by setting fire to what once held you back and using the flames to light the path ahead.